Okay, so hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa. Yeah, so it has been a while, quite a while actually, since we have been live, or since we have actually did any interview or discussion. But we are now we're back. That's the most important thing. So with our brother Kwame Gonza, welcome, Kwame.
Thank you so much, Mahlet. Greetings to everyone. We've been away for quite some time for certain, reasons. Of course, as humans, we all have challenges, but the good thing is that we are back. Nevertheless, we are back still in the struggle because we signed on to the struggle for Pan Africanism, the struggle for our continent. So that is not a struggle for us. We are willing to, to give up on. So we keep coming back to it, and that, in a way, also speaks to consistency. So regardless of the challenges which we find as humans, but we think that we have to always come back, to this struggle and the struggle for our continent and contribute to the work, of course, which was started, since this is our generation, and our elders had their generation. And Mallet, I want to thank you for this platform, also for constantly being, a tireless warrior and organizer, and someone who loves our continent and our people. Definitely, you can't love, the continent without loving its people, not only on the continent, but across the globe. So I want to thank you, Mallet, and I want to thank you once again for organizing this, and for pioneering this platform, Connect Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kwame, for that really very good introduction. And we haven't had the chance to say Happy New Year. It's still, I think, better to be late than not saying. So Happy New Year to everyone. Yeah. So let's go into it. So our topic, the first discussion topic in 2023 is the summit itself, the AU, the 36th AU summit that has been held, I think, 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, in Addis Ababa. So yeah, and the African Continental Free Trade Area, since it is the theme of the year, and its challenges and opportunities as we go forward. So 2 weeks ago, the summit, the 36th summit of the African Union, the ordinary summit, has been held. And during the summit, as usual, the chairperson of the commission, Faki Mohammed Musa, the host Ethiopia, the incoming and outgoing chairperson of the union, Macky Sall, and then the incoming is I don't want to make a mistake, but it's a president of Comoros. So those have made a speech. And from the non-African ones, the Secretary General of the UN, the Arab League, the Prime Minister of Palestine, has made a speech. Now, our focus is, and I quote, Faki Mohammed said, the chairperson of the commission, it's imperative that our member states decide with determination in their economic and development choices, evidencing one of the various, so while evidencing one of the various activities where the member states are choosing having a say or a determination with their choices related to their economy. He mentions the intra-African solidarity, which brings us, the African Continental Free Trade Area. And also it's the theme of the year. It's saying acceleration of the African Continental Free Trade Area implementation. So in this, the Secretary General of the Secretariat, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area said, gradually there are elimination of tariffs, meaning 90% of the tariffs in member states, and it's good. Uh, Removing barriers and others. So it's like a 10-year plan. So my question is, Brother Kwame, is this something doable for Africa? I mean, 2035 is just around the corner. Given the current practices of the political commitment from our leaders, and in terms of choosing their partners, uh, I mean, is it really completely free, only for member states intra-Africa trade, or do we have some hijackers? Because as we hear, a number of non-African countries are talking about it, creating awareness in Europe, in US. Everybody's talking about it as if they are so comfortable with the agenda. It's something that you can look with a side eye, really. So why are they? Walk through us.
Yeah, I thank you, Mahlet. Once again for organizing these important talks. You see, apart from a few platforms and and other international platforms where African affairs are spoken about, mutedly, it is very, very rare that you find African people sitting down, to discuss some of these policies, some of these programs, some of these initiatives, how they, affect them, or how these initiatives are going to affect them, and how they are going to affect the continent, or especially our African intellectuals across the continent, whether it is in South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, to sit down and say, how are we going to, take advantage of these initiatives that have been, started? Or how is it, as we people who are sort of like educated or in middle class, how do we make sure that the people who are most underprivileged, normally, which they call underprivileged in society, how are they going to benefit from this? How are they going to understand the benefits of projects like, for example, Africa Continental Free Trade Area? If you are talking about a single passport, for the continent. So is very important that we continue to have this dialogue, about projects like this. And I want to applaud you, for the courage, in starting these kind of conversation. For the African Continental Free Trade Area, absolutely, it is a very important project when you look at it. That if it is implemented properly, the so-called World Bank estimates that in the next few years, it has the potential of lifting about 100 million Africans out of poverty. So that is if it is implemented properly. So and we also agree, because when you look at our continent, we are not trading enough. A lot of that has been thrown around, how Africa is not trading with itself compared to other continents across the world. If you look at Asia, if you look at Europe, for example, the European Union, they have even single passports over there. When you look at the United States and its neighbors, Mexico and Canada. So the trade in Africa is very low, but there is reasons why, that trade has been, like that for some time. And that is simply because Africa's share of Africa's share of manufacturing across the globe declined since the 70s. When you look at the 1970s, 1960s up to 70s, when our forefathers gained independence, they thought it prudent, they thought it constructive, to build the factories, manufacturing, to engage in manufacturing and make Africa industrialized. And from the 60s, from 50s to the 70s, Africa gained even from almost zero of the total manufacturing in the world up to 7%. But when they were overthrown, when these our leaders were overthrown by the imperialists and they didn't like them, they didn't like the idea of Africa being industrialized. Many of them were overthrown. Others were killed. We remember, Patrice, Lumumba in the Congo. We remember how they overthrew Nkrumah. We remember they overthrew Dr. Milton Obote. So when these leaders were overthrown, then we had policies like structural adjustments, which came from the same people who were colonizers, who colonized our continent, claiming that they are coming to help the continent. But what we saw after the round, the first round of the structural adjustments, we saw that Africa rather became deindustrialized after that process. And this was a deliberate strategy of the West to deindustrialize Africa so that Africa is not industrialized. And what does this mean? And how is this connected to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? It is not connected because each of the African countries, their industrialization declined to 5%, which is our share right now of the global manufacturing, capacity. So in this decline, it made it possible that the various African countries do not have products to sell to each other. And the only products which we have are agricultural products, which, these are the products which we, have in majority. If you are talking about coffee in the East, if you are talking about cocoa in the western part of the continent, if you're talking about corn and these agricultural products. But when you are talking about manufactured products like maybe vehicles or electronics, these products are not existent on the continent. The high value manufacturing, whereby we add value. And Africa has mostly been depending on what is called commodities or raw materials. Rather, our raw materials now are shipped outside. And because we don't have industries, those raw materials, we cannot trade in raw materials with each other as Africans. So those raw materials have been shipped out of the continent to go and benefit Europe and build those cars over there, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz. When they finish building them, then they bring them back. Ford, Chevrolet and General Motors and all those cars, Chrysler, all those cars, and they bring them back to Africa as finished products. And this is the same cycle that our forefathers were, like Nkrumah, were fighting against. So the Africa Continental Free Trade Area would succeed. It would succeed if we implemented it in the right context. And what did our forefathers say about this trade? And these are some of the questions which our people, when they are trying to implement these things, they don't ask themselves, what did our forefathers say, about this, project of a common market for the African continent. They say that we have to look at unifying Africa continentally first, politically, so that we can have a single government before we can talk of trading. Because what are we going to trade if we don't have products? We have seen that at the secretariat itself, and don't get me wrong, this is not trying to discourage me myself. I like the continent, and I'm so much in love with this project, but at the same time we have to face the reality. And people like Wemekele, who's the Secretary General of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, His Excellency Wemekele Mene, he's doing a tremendous job across the continent of visiting different African countries, engaging the different stakeholders. But these people have to have something to trade. They have to have something to trade, not merely even though majority of our people are in agriculture, but the agriculture has to, value has to be added. But there is no plan. I don't see any plan, any solid plan of adding value to the agricultural, products. but on top of that, we cannot only develop through agriculture, but also industrialization. And that industrialization, there's no accountability. Maybe you can talk of, there's no strong championing institution that is pushing for the exchange in industrialization. And in some cases, we have seen that certain countries are duplicating the activities which other countries are doing, which brings a lot of wastage. You can talk of, for example, in the eastern part of the continent, you see that on the other side, Uganda is trying to manufacture electric cars. In the western part, we have Nigeria also is trying to manufacture cars. We have Ghana also trying to manufacture cars. But at the same time, again, you have foreigners jumping into countries like Ghana, where the Secretariat of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is, and they want to take advantage of this trade, claiming that they are manufacturing cars from here, and yet they are assembling these cars from here. We have seen Toyota, establish assembling plants in Ghana. We have seen Volkswagen establish assembling plants in Ghana. We have seen Volkswagen, the same Volkswagen as establish assembling plants in countries like South Africa, Rwanda. Okay, even in Kenya, I think it attempted to establish also in Kenya. So they are really not doing the manufacturing, but rather they are doing the assembling, activities, and this is going to kill off our manufacturing capabilities that we were trying to build up for companies, for example, like Kira Motors from Uganda. You can talk of Inoson in Nigeria. They are also manufacturing cars. Instead of empowering this, and in Ghana also there is another company called Kantanka Automobile. So these, instead of empowering them and protecting them and nurturing them in the same, walking in the same steps which China walked through when it was developing, that you have to protect, you have to protect your local industries. The United States also, this is how it grew, the protection of its local industries before they became, multinationals and corporations. The same, way Britain grew, protection of its local industries before they became multinationals. But you find that in Africa, everything in some way is left like it is on automatic pilot. The leaders, they put, they sort of remove their hands, on the things, as if the things are going to run themselves. Projects are going to autopilot themselves to success, and which is not the case that is going to happen. We have seen also differences in opinion, you see, and this difference in opinion, whereby African leaders have different, thoughts regarding this project of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, also will bring a disaster, or on the continent. And this regards especially when it comes to security. We have seen that we have a lot of insecurity, for example, in the western part of the continent. We have seen in Mali, insecurity in Mali. We have seen insecurity, all over the Sahel, even across the border between Ghana and Burkina Faso, and the Ivory Coast. And all this, becomes a problem. And the leaders, when they do not understand how to distinguish between the forces that are for the people and the forces that are against the people, as we have seen the Ghanaian president supporting, the neo-colonialists and their activities, in the western part of the continent, not knowing that we have African people who are tired of neo-colonialism. So from his position, it is like he supports neo-colonialism to continue on the continent and oppress the people. The people should not fight against it to throw, off this, colonialism. So all this insecurity, comes into play when you are talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area and its success. Will it be a successful enterprise or project if we have all this insecurity, if we have leaders who have different opinions, if we have leaders who have left the project to operate on autopilot, so that the foreigners will come and take control, take advantage, because there's no a strong institution. Because as we know, we know that the power of the African Union is within the heads of state. The African Union itself does not have power unless the power, it does. The African Union Commission does what the heads of state, they tell it to do. So if the heads of state have decided to neglect their activities and say, now the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, let the African Union Commission follow up and do this and do that, and they sit back without sort of being accountable, sign these agreements. Agreements have been signed, declarations have been signed, numerous of them, and nothing has been, followed up. So when you sign and you ratify the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and then you don't want to take responsibility or to take care and follow up to see what is happening in other parts of the continent, and you just want to stay in your small country or Ghana and say, I'm here, I'm part of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, but you don't want to understand what is going on in the other part of the continent. You don't want to pay attention to the response of the people to the current political dispensation that is going on, but rather you are more focused on to your stay in power. Then that becomes also, becomes a big problem, to these kind of enterprise. So the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we see that it has in some way been left on autopilot, and that is a disaster, and that is a recipe for, for failure. That is why our ancestors, our forefathers said it, get political power first, because they understood that if you have a political union first, a union of African state, a united, or whatever you may call it the United States of Africa. If you have this first, then you have every state on the continent is going to be accountable to this power, of the central government, this power of the federal government. So there's no way people will be misbehaving. But today we see people misbehaving, taking the continent in different direction. This one is going in a different direction, different opinions being thrown around, and this all brings confusion, to the African people, within the African people, and it opens doors for the enemies of the continent, for the enemies of Africa. So we see that projects are being implemented, and is in their implementation, it is like these projects are on autopilot, and the people they are put in that position of implementing the projects, they really don't have power to enforce these projects. The best they can do is to try their best. That is what they can do. People like Secretary General, the best he can do is to do his best, but he cannot go in countries. He cannot go to Egypt and enforce the Africa Continental Free Trade Area there. He cannot go to Morocco. He cannot go to Zimbabwe and enforce the Africa Continental Free Trade Area there. If the heads of state themselves have not agreed that, or have not, agreed to take responsibility, full responsibility, not only for signing onto these agreements and ratifying them, but also the responsibility, full responsibility of implementation. We have seen different leaders even complaining that when they go to the African Union, for these summits, different leaders, have different opinions, that it is almost as it become almost like unproductive. Unless there's a crisis, that is when you see some sort of activity going on, like what happened last year when there was a crisis, a sort of crisis in Ethiopia. That is when you see like there is some sort of activity, there is some sort of life within the African Union, because there is some sort of crisis. But when there's no crisis, you see that the leaders want to operate like everything should be on autopilot, and it is really this really becomes unfortunate. It is unfortunate, and it really becomes unfortunate for the whole continent. We pray that the project will succeed, but if you do not lay it on a solid foundation, then definitely with the problems we are seeing across the continent, with the interest of external forces, within the continent, as you've spoken about rightly, Europe, it is already, looking at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The United States is looking at it. All of them, they want to come and dump here their finished products, and the United States is militarizing all across the continent. The Africa Command is in the east of Indian Ocean, across in Zanzibar, is in the Gulf of Guinea, is all across the continent, is in the northern part of Africa. We've seen it in countries like Djibouti. So we are in some sort of siege, whereby we are being besieged by the United States and Europe, who want to take control of our market, because that is why they came here in the first place. That was the reason for colonialism, was for them to find new markets for their finished goods. So, and the same thing is happening today, because these things don't change. They want to find raw materials for their factories and then find markets to dump their products. And this is the reason for the militarization by the United States across our continent. It has surrounded us, with all kind of, militarization, and this becomes unfortunate if leaders don't come together, and they think that things are just going to be on autopilot, or things will fix themselves. You just sign on and ratify, then things move automatically. You just give it to babies to run with them and say, we have already signed, let the Africa Continental Free Trade Area move forward. So I think this becomes really unfortunate. And we as Africans, I think also we need to make our voices heard. We need to start these conversations like this. The conversations like this are very, important. And we need to be really aggressive, because this generation, I think that this generation has to be up to the task that we have to liberate. We have to continue and liberate the continent, or we have to do what Dr. Nkrumah's daughter, Samia Nkrumah, calls the unfinished business. There is unfinished business which was left to us, that we have to continue and finish the cycle of liberation that was started in 1940s, 1930s, 1940s, 50s, 60s, until 1993, when South Africa got its independence. Even though we still have the Sahrawi Republic, which is still under siege by Morocco. So I think that as the youth, we have to step up and take this responsibility and take it in good faith. Thank you very much, Mahlet. Mahlet, unmute yourself.
Yeah, so sorry, that happens to me every time. Yeah, so there's a lot of, definitely it's an opportunity. It's a great platform to realize that Pan-Africanism, but again, it's not without a challenge. We have challenges, which again and again brings us back to where it is started, when this organization is established, the unity of the continent, especially first and foremost politically. Moving forward, my second question is actually there was this initiative, I think, after it is ratified by some of the people in 2016 or something, or 18, they created, meaning some of the member states from different countries, from different regions of the continent, a guided trade initiative, what they call it, guided trade initiative.
Yes.
And, now this guided trade initiative is planning to focus, or rather focusing in this year, on trade in services, which are like transport, business services, communication, financial services, and tourism as well. Number one, you have, I know that you have an interesting project that you shared. I've read what you shared on your LinkedIn, and with regards to how to connect this how do you say, puzzle, ever since AU, or the then Organization of African Unity, we have been talking about connecting Cape to Cairo, and we still haven't done it. If you can, since practical, if you can share with us that project or plan that you did, how to connect with the high speed uh, network, meaning using a train. And number two, related to this, what do you think of these selected trade-in services will do, or in terms of what kind of role they will play in generating a greater commitment, political commitment of our leaders? Is it better when we do trade-in services? And secondly, yeah, as an example, if you can share with us your project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mahlet, again. So what we are seeing is that, like we say, the African Continental Free Trade Area is a very good project, but it has to be built on a solid foundation. So now, for you to trade goods on the African continent, and I'm coming to that point where you spoke about the guided trade initiative. It started, I think, last year, whereby Ghana was able to send some tiles, manufactured tiles which are manufactured in Ghana. They were sent to Cameroon, Kenya, and I think Rwanda. They were able to send some tea and coffee from East Africa to Ghana. So it was sort of a testing to test it to see how these program, how this project will be able to run. But at the same time, when you look at it critically, you can still see that the project is still in the hands sort of the elites. Okay, so this pilot project was not carried out on the ground on the common people, but rather you can see that it was people who already have money, who already have a lot of money, and they have these, either factories or big businesses. And which is unfortunate, that in majority of our countries, even the factories, because our people historically did not have capital to start these factories, you find that the tea which was exported from Kenya, is factories owned by people who are Indians, and that kind of outlook. You find that the tiles which were exported from Ghana, they are manufactured like by Chinese who are in the country, or Lebanese. They are the ones manufacturing these products. So we are not saying this is bad, since they are providing jobs here and there, but I think there should be uh, a guided initiative for empowering, local people, African people, to build the industries, not merely, singing loud songs of, foreign investment, when this foreign investment actually is coming to impoverish the people, to exploit the land further and further, more and more, as we have seen. We have seen from the report which was released by United Nations in 2011, I mean 2021, that the biggest loss to Africa, the financial outflow, the biggest illicit financial outflow that is happening on Africa, is carried out by multinational companies. And these are companies which are coming to the continent in the name of investing, and they are brought here as foreign investors, but they are stealing. They are the same companies which are stealing from the continent, and they are stealing a lot of money. The UN claims it is around $89 billion every year, but actual figures point to more than $200 billion. A year, figures by Pan-African researchers point to more than $200 billion, and so to some extent, this, to a very larger extent actually, this narrative of foreign investors who come here, like how we spoke about Volkswagen, we spoke about Nissan, we spoke about Toyota, who are coming here, and they are not, some of them are not really manufacturing, but rather they are assembling finished products. They have already given the jobs to their people in England, to their people in Japan, in Germany. They are bringing here 5 jobs and exploiting and selling these cars here and exploiting our people and making huge profits. They will give the jobs to 100 people, 5 to 100 people, and they will exploit 1 million people, impoverish about 1 million people, and take over the economy, take the money and send it back to Europe. And this will go on like that, if the leaders continue to operate, because they continue to operate in a negligent manner. Like we say, they leave the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to be on autopilot. There's no overseeing institution, which is going to say how much money now is being repatriated, across the continent. Because we have decided to remain balkanized or divided, but then we are saying we are carrying out trade. So these people who have come here to exploit now these resources, they will just clap their hands, because they can exploit here. If you make noise, then they will run to the next country and exploit there, and transfer the money from that country. If that country complains, they jump to another country. So because you are divided and you don't have a single institution that is going to hold these people accountable, so they will keep jumping like that, and the exploitation will continue, and we will even be in a much worse exploitation than we were in, during colonialism and all that. So, and you will find that the trade rather is benefiting foreigners. And don't get me wrong, we want foreign investors to come, but we want foreign investors who are going to bring here technology, who are going to bring here know-how, so that our people can be skilled. And all these things cannot be done if there is no oversight. If you have decided to make the foreign investors gods who know everything, what to do, that you leave everything for, you don't have a policy, towards investors. Your only policy is to welcome them and say, do whatever you want. This way we can't develop as Africans. So we will end up again in exploitation. Now that is the issue about the initial, trade guided, that initiative. So you spoke of the other hiccups on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and before I come to the issue of rail for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, for it to succeed, there has to be what I said, what I call the fundamentals. The fundamentals have to be right. Like we see in the 1960s, Nkrumah insisted that we have to form a political union first. So this takes us back to, or points us back to oversight, because what he envisioned is oversight, that there has to be a bigger body where everyone accounts to. So when there's no accountability, people do whatever they want. People move in whatever direction they want. Nigeria tomorrow can decide to block off the trade between Nigeria and Ghana, and block the border and say we don't want Ghana's goods to come here. Ghana can do the same to Nigeria and say block it off. We don't want goods to come here. So what can Secretary General Wemekele Mene do? And apart from appealing, he will pull out his document and say conflict resolution, in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And this happened, between Uganda and Rwanda. We saw this, that there was a conflict between these two people. There was a disagreement. Rwanda decided to close off the border. 1, 2, 3 years. And a lot of industries were affected, in Uganda, because Uganda exports a lot to Rwanda. A lot of industries, cement, soap, plastics, all these industries were affected because they used to export a lot to Rwanda. So, and this interrupted trade. People's lives were made it difficult. The traders at the border. So they closed it off. And yet these two countries, all of them are signatories to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, but they closed the border for 3 years. And this same thing, the first example I gave you, which is Nigeria, they have ever done this before. They closed off the border and they say Ghanaian goods cannot come in. They say they are protecting their industries. So this is the issue of oversight. So which takes us back to Nkrumah when he's talking about a union government. He emphasized the union government because he saw and understood that this is the only way this thing will work if we want our people to develop rapidly. We want to develop our industries rapidly. Someone has to be responsible for the major policy on the continent, foreign policy, industrial policy, economic policy, and then the security, the military, which we said also is a very important pillar. Recently, President Museveni was in South Africa at the invitation of President Ramaphosa, and he was also speaking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. He said this is a good initiative, but how are we going to trade if the Congo is unstable? How are we going to trade if the Sahel is unstable? And the people who have been causing this, instability, overthrowing governments in Libya, overthrowing governments in Somalia in 1994, in Libya in 2011, they are still on the continent and militarizing and insisting that they are supposed to be around. So one of the things that came up between in this meeting between President Museveni and President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa is, how do we confront this colonialism now? How do we confront this neo-colonialism? Because we can't trade. We can't trade if these people are here. They are always disturbing the continent, destabilizing the continent. We can't trade if they are speaking in the ear of President Nanado, and then we, go this direction, and he is also destabilizing the place this side. And then we have African people in Mali and Burkina Faso. They want to be free from neo-colonialism. They want to be Africans. They don't want to be French. They are not French. These are African people. They want to be African. And Nanado is saying you should be French. You should accept it, colonialism. So that kind of chaos, how can we trade when we have this kind of chaos? So this was the question that President Museveni was raising, and he was saying that we are making our contribution in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but even President Felix Tshisekedi himself has to decide, is he on the part of the Africans or is in part of the neo-colonialists? So he has to be clear. If he wants Congo to be stable, then he has to decide to solve the problems in the same context of Africa. African solutions to African problems. President Cyril Ramaphosa has spoken about this, that we stand for African solutions to African problems. And Prime Minister Abiy is the one almost who started this narrative and emphasized and strengthened this narrative of African solutions to African problems. And other African leaders bought it in. So you, President Felix Tshisekedi, if you have a problem with Rwanda, is it necessary for you to spend half of your speech at the United Nations talking about Rwanda and how it is destabilizing the Democratic Republic of Congo with all the history you know? So this is what we are saying, that African solutions to African problems have to take center stage. Then this is the question that President Museveni was raising to Felix Tshisekedi and say, which side are you on? Do you want imperialists to solve this problem, or you want the Africans to solve the problem? Because we have seen from time to time throughout history that imperialists, they don't solve problems. They exasperate, they exasperate these problems. They escalate them actually, so that they can benefit. When sides are fighting, they benefit from instability, and this has been shown throughout history. So it becomes difficult for a leader, someone who's the president and knows the history of the place, to behave as if he doesn't know, and then start moving in the opposite direction. And this is where questions, start coming up and say, can we implement the African Continental Free Trade Area with all this insecurity, with all this instability? That is a very important fundamental. We spoke about the fundamental. First, we spoke about the fundamental of a political union. If we don't have a political union, it will be very difficult. It will be very, very difficult for us to succeed with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Extremely difficult. Number two, if we have this insecurity across the continent, and which is being fueled by the imperialists and neo-colonialists, it will be very difficult for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to succeed. Extremely difficult. We cannot industrialize when these people are disturbing us here and we have insecurity. People are fighting to throw off neo-colonialism. And neocolonialism is insisting that it must stay here. We have seen in the past few days, Macron has been making trips to the African continent. Even right now is on trips. He's planning trips to the African continent. He wants to come again and again and again because they have problems in Europe. They are facing problems in Europe. So they want to bring those problems on the African continent, onto the African continent. So he has been here already. Even the last time he came here, he was insulting the Africans and claiming that the Africans are hypocrites, as if we Africans have gone to Europe to attack him, as if we have called him to come to Africa and give us anything. Because he thought that Africa is an extension of Europe. Africa should support him in his war with Ukraine. They started the war. Africa was not there. So they should deal with their problems. I don't see why they want to bring Africa in these, problems. So this is what we are seeing, that if we don't have the second fundamental, which is peace and stability on the continent, it is unlikely that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area will succeed. And again, I want to mention, we don't say this because we don't want it to succeed, but because we are realists. We analyze things, from a realistic point of view, and we say, can this project succeed without peace? It can't. Without peace and stability on the continent. Can it succeed when these imperialists are behind and always, causing chaos across the continent and speaking in the ear of one president and disturbing here and destabilizing, this side, and militarizing in Djibouti, militarizing in the Gulf of Guinea, militarizing in the Indian Ocean? What do they want in the Indian Ocean? What do they want in the Gulf of Guinea? Why are they, participating and coercing African countries to participate in militarization and military operations across our continent? What do they want? What do they want to establish AFRICOM in Zambia? Why do they have AFRICOM, in Djibouti? So these questions have to come. And these people, they have never wished us anything good. So I think we have to come to reality with this understanding. So number three fundamental which we see is the infrastructure. If we do not have infrastructure, to move the goods across the continent, like you rightly spoke about the African Union, and also, the project which we are working on. The African Union, of course, started in 2014 with a project which was called the Africa Integrated Rail Network. The Africa Integrated High-Speed Rail Network, which was supposed to be a project that would link the African continent. And this was, the Africa Agenda 2063 was initiated or was instituted under the leadership of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Nkosazana Zuma. So she spoke about her vision for the continent, and she participated very well, and she contributed greatly, actually. She was a great leader, I can say. But these projects, like I said, when they are instituted at the African Union headquarters, they are left on autopilot. There's no accountability. There's no reasonable follow-up. There's no, we don't have a body that is dedicated to either bringing the African heads of state to a constant reminder that you have to work on this project. You have to bring peace on the continent. You have to contribute to the troops. Let us form one military force. The power is still enshrined in the heads of state. And for some reason, it is as if they don't know what to do with this power, and they don't know how to share it with the African Union so that the African Union can function. And so there is some sort of confusion until we figure that out. And give the power, because the point and the purpose of Nkrumah saying we need a political union was to transfer the power to act, the power to do, the political will into one body. Let us have that power in one body, and let us not have the power dispersed into 55, heads of state who don't know what to do with that power, who are misusing that power, who are inactive, with that power. They have made that power inactive, that the people need things done. They need high-speed rail like that, being done, which is a very good project. But the project cannot be done because the leaders, either they don't understand that even it is there. Some of them have not even read the Agenda 2063. So they don't understand that that project is there, is supposed to be done. Or they are so much concentrating on their narrow interests in each in their corner, that they don't understand what is at stake across the continent. So that becomes unfortunate. So number three, fundamental number three, which is infrastructure. Without infrastructure, logistics, transferring of goods, because when you're talking about trade, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, then you are talking about goods moving, from different parts of the continent to, where there is plenty, to the other parts of the continent where there is lack, or, parts where the goods are needed. So this is what we are talking about as fundamental number four. So we came up with this idea when we looked at the project that was initiated by the African Union in 2014. We looked at that project and it has not been followed on. It has not been followed up. So we came up with the idea of what we called the African Railway Triangle Network Master Plan. And even though this project called the African Railway Triangle Network Master Plan was designed by myself, and I work with a railway company called Black Star Rail Limited, which is based in Accra, Ghana. But we looked at the project which was initiated by the African Union, which I spoke about very well. The project which is called the Africa Integrated High-Speed Rail Network. That project, it was not it has not been fast tracked since 2014 when it was initiated, and then it was not, the way it was looked at, it was not looked at with the understanding actually of the Africa, a continental free trade area. It was not integrated, very well, if I may say, with the Africa continental free trade area, to understand how goods would move across the continent, to understand how Africa is connected to the rest of the world through the Atlantic Ocean, on the other side, the Red Sea, and then on this side, the Indian Ocean. So it is very important that we understand that, and that is how we designed the African Railway Triangle Network Master Plan. So when we looked at how many countries, because if you are designing such a project, you need at least that project, if you are going to call it a continental project, you need the project to pass at least in 2/3 of the continent, or if I may say, more than 65% of the continent. You need the project to pass through at least 65% of the countries or on the continent, the number of the countries. And this our project, the way we designed it, it encompasses more than 2/3 of the continent. So you can see that it makes it easier to move goods from the eastern part of the continent to the western part of the continent, from south to north, and then from the western part of the continent to the northern part of the continent. So it makes it easier that it moves from east all through the central. It moves from south to the north. It moves from the north to the to the western part, and then it moves from the western part to the south. So it makes this project a very viable project, and which is a project which can easily be integrated into the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. If you look at the goals, and objectives and of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and what it wants to achieve in the next shortest period. So when we designed this project, then we invited also the African Union with the understanding that they already have a project. So we understand that if we integrate these two projects, if we integrate the African Railway Triangle Network Master Plan with the African Union's Africa Integrated High-Speed Rail Network, then we can come up with something very solid, On top of that, this is a project which is going to cover more than 20,000, more than 20,000 kilometers across the continent. And it will not only be a rail network, but rather it will come with other industries. You can talk of industries, for example, like steel. Okay, we will, or along the rail line, along the rail network, we would have to establish, a steel industry, to supply the steel that is going to be used all across the 20,000, kilometers of the rail. We would establish, for example, with partners, majorly who are willing. There is those in Europe, there's those in China, those who are willing on our terms as Africans, absolutely on our terms, because we would find our own money, we would find our own way of raising, this money, to build this project. As we saw, Ethiopia was able to build the seventh biggest dam in the world. So how was Ethiopia able to build that project? So there is a lot of models of raising funds which we can speak of. And so the issue of funds, this is around a $65 billion project. So the issue of funds is not really a big problem that we want to focus on. So once we establish how we are going to raise our funds, which is assured, these funds are assured because this is a viable project, a very profitable project. Then we can select partners in this project so that we can drive it on our own terms as Africans. We have to drive the project on our terms. We have to establish, for example, railway. This railway, we have to establish steel industries across the chain, when where the rail is going to to pass. For example, you can talk of Guinea across the West African region. There's a lot of iron ore. We can establish a steel industry there. In the eastern part, Uganda too has some iron ore, very clean one. Establish a factory there. So in the northern, we can go to the northern, we can go to the south. So we establish various steel industries across where this rail network is going to be. The jobs which come with that, we have to make sure that at least 65% of the professional jobs, or even 70% of the professional jobs, not the laborers, but the professional jobs across the rail network are employed, are being worked on by Africans, at least 70% of the project. And there's a lot of other things we can speak of. We can speak of even the construction of the trains themselves, across the different regions, that we will divide and have different regions. We will have those trains being constructed. And it has to be Africans with other partners. Other partners, they can come on board. We can talk to the Chinese. We can talk to the French. They have Alstom. They have a company called Alstom. We have China Railway. China Railway also, they are there. So the different partners who want to come in, but they come to this project on our terms. They don't come in. So this is where this project integrates, very well with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and it will help to speed up the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, because the Africa Continental Free Trade Area has said that 2023 is the year of acceleration of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So, and even I know, Mahlet, I remember we spoke about it, before coming to air, that I will be planning to visit the Secretary General of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and that is a trip which I'm planning to visit him in his office in Accra, so that we can have a discussion on this project. But if anyone out there who's watching this channel, Connect Africa, as we have already told you, is dedicated to African affairs, and mostly discussing, issues that affect us as African people. If you are out there and you know someone who's willing to work with us on such mega projects and help us, reach out to people like President Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the Africa Development Bank, African Union, the people who are concerned with infrastructure, and then the Africa Continental Free Trade Area itself. If you know people directly who are working on these kind of projects, we would welcome that kind of partnership, so that we can work together. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Really, really impressive. And it just, even listening to it, the excitement, and it doesn't matter whether I will be able to see it in my lifetime, but you can see that it's doable. All it needs is that political commitment. And for our children, for the next generation, it's very impressive. I really hope that it reaches to the ear of who is really concerned about this, meaning the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area. I was going to say that, yes, we did talk about it before coming to air. I really hope that you will get to meet him, which he's sitting in your country, in your city. So, yeah, that should be possible. Now, talking about billions of dollars, and then there is already a project, a sample for us in the continent, how to fundraise projects, money, such big, amount. Meaning, you mentioned the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So
Absolutely.
that brings us to the final question: who is actually financing the African Continental Free Trade Area? How is it financed? Because we know that most of the programs in the African Union are, including the salaries, are funded by non-African actors there.
Yeah, so it is unfortunate that the African Union itself, uh, almost 70% of its cost is being financed by foreigners, European Union, the United States. Uh, and actually, on one side, it is even shocking or surprising that the African Union, has been able to do certain certain things like organizing, the peace talks which happened between Ethiopia and the rebels were disturbing the northern part of the country in Tigray, to stand up and put up some sort of resistance. But the African Continental Free Trade Area is a pet project of the African Union. And like we have said, the African Union is being sponsored by foreigners. Majority of its budget is being sponsored by foreigners. President Kagame had been given a task of
Yeah.
reforming the African Union, and one of his duties actually was to institute a system of self-financing of the African Union. And it looks like, from the look of things, he has not been able to succeed. And and it takes us back to the same thing which we have been talking about, that the African heads of state have decided to leave things on autopilot. They think that things will do themselves. There is no political will. There's no political will in attending to the urgent affairs that affect our continent and even the world. If you look at the events that are going on across the world, there is a need for the African Union to be engaged. There is need for Africa to be engaged in solving the war that is going on, in Ukraine. People like the Western world is supporting and sending weapons while people are dying. And as Africans, as people, the first people on earth, we need to be concerned. And if there is a nuclear war across in Ukraine, that war, the nuclear dust will blow across and come to Africa and affect our people. So the African Union and leaders, to a certain level, they have decided to leave everything on autopilot, as if everything will do itself, and concentrate in small, insignificant corners, which they know that there's nothing that is going to come out from there apart from balkanization, subjugation, and colonialism, and crushing neo-colonialism is the only result that is going to come out of those small regions. So they have decided to concentrate themselves in those corners and put everything on autopilot and expect that things will just happen miraculously. And this is not the case. And I think that the next generation, I would call on the next generation of African leaders to abandon this kind of thinking. We have to play. We are in the world. We are in the continent, and we have to play that like the continent belongs to us, because it does. And then we are in the world. We are part of the world. We have to play in the world. We have to play in Ukraine. We have to put our voice. We have to make our voice heard as Africans. Where are the Africans who are talking about this war in Ukraine? And where are the presidents? Some of them have decided to be surrogates. They have decided to be vessels to be used instead of championing the African position. We have seen South Africa stand up strongly and say we want to be independent, but we have seen other presidents, in West Africa, they have decided to be vessels to be used instead of standing up and expressing themselves and say, no, this is Africa's position. If a nuclear war starts between the United States, which is fueling and the war with its partners, instead of stopping, if you're talking about stopping the war, then stop pouring weapons into Ukraine. Russia has said that they want to negotiate. Why is the United States pouring weapons into Ukraine? Why is it pouring weapons into Ukraine? And the African Union has to come up, to stand up and speak up on that position and say, this is escalating the war. But where is it? We don't see African heads of state speaking up. They have instead decided to keep quiet and pretend like everything will be okay by itself. And it will not be okay when these people start fighting. Our people will suffer in the northern part, and that nuclear dust would blow all the way, into even to the central or even up to the southern part of the continent, and our people would suffer. And they would suffer because the leaders have decided to neglect their duty. They have decided to neglect their responsibility towards not only their people, but towards the world. Because we have a stake in the world. We have a stake in the world as Africans. And even if the Europeans do not want to listen to us, but we have to speak. And we have to speak as Africans, not to speak as Europeans, as surrogates, as people who are being used, against our own interests. And so this is what I see, when we are talking about, the situation on our continent, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the stability, and our role as the youth, the role of our leaders, the role of the AU, the financing. We have to stand. There is enough money. We have much more money than our ancestors had in the 1940s, 1930s, but yet they were able to fight and defeat colonialism, and able to stand by themselves and build us industries and build us the foundation on which we are standing. So the African Union doesn't need to be borrowing money from the United States and Europe or even taking arms from the United States and Europe, because the United States itself doesn't even have the money. It is a declining power. So it is high time we as a people stand strong and say, this is where we are going to get the money to finance this project. And this responsibility is supposed to be for the youth. The youth are supposed to shoulder this responsibility of starting to look into these problems that have affected our continent for a very long time, and our elders and leaders have failed to solve these problems. So it is our responsibility now. It is our time. It is the time for the youth to confront these problems once and for all and solve them, so that our continent can move forward. So thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Really, it was an interesting and exciting discussion in a way. I came to this live discussion. Oh my God, there are a lot of, sometimes you envision it, challenges than opportunity. We all have been happy a couple of years ago when it was really ratified by a number of countries, immediately by a number of member states. And then, along the way, we have seen problems, different challenges, meaning most of them stemming from political commitment. But again, now you come up with all this explanation and, this plan, especially, again, it gives a hope. It gives a hope. And I'm sure it will do the same to our audience. For the first time, we did a Facebook Live. I did it even without realizing, I wouldn't lie. I did subscribe for both YouTube Live and Facebook Live, but when we just entered to studio, I think I selected the Facebook. It wasn't my plan, but yeah, I will hopefully I will be able to download and then upload it again on the YouTube. Uh, Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kwame. And hopefully, we will be able at least to do once in a week, because the people really need what you bring to the table. Yeah, I'm very happy for what you have shared.
Thank you very much, Mahlet. Thank you also for providing the platform, and we would like to encourage those people who are out there to come and support all Pan-African organizations, because our future is Pan-African, and there's no any other force that is strong and is formidable enough to uproot colonialism and neo-colonialism from our continent, apart from Pan-Africanism, because all through the ages, it has been Pan-Africanism that has, helped us to overcome the colonial challenge, the slavery challenge. So we still strongly believe that Pan-Africanism is rooted within the structures of the African Union, because it was the basis upon which that institution was started. And even though the people who are there may not understand it, but the spirit of Pan Africanism is still very much alive within that union and within the Pan African Parliament, which is in South Africa, I think in Johannesburg. So we need to understand that this is the spirit. So you need to support all people who are making Pan African efforts at unifying our continent. Organizations like Africans Rising, which has a program and a campaign for a single passport across the continent and open borders. You need to find those petitions out there and sign them. We also had petitions a time ago, and those petitions are still ongoing. You can search for them on Google. We are also talking about a single passport. We are talking about a single military on the continent. That these are initiatives which we are calling for, and we are talking about a stoppage to all wars. We are talking about a single currency. So these are things, and we are talking about a union government. And these are things which President Museveni actually himself also spoke about when he was recently in South Africa, was speaking about stability. How can we, counter this instability on the continent? How can we counter and fight against these neo-colonial forces that are across the continent? There's no other way for us to do that unless we work together as Africans, unless we coordinate our efforts across the continent. It's the only way we can uproot imperialism. So organizations are out there. Put your hand in there and support, sign the petitions, support with any amount. This channel, support it with any amount you can, so that we can also be encouraged to continue
Yeah.
the work. Subscribe and share. This is not a joke for us. We are not here to look for likes. That is why you see sometimes the channel, we are not always here every day, because we are not simply looking for likes, but rather we want to bring valuable content that is going to be even spoken about in the next 50 to 100 years. Okay, so we are bringing projects which are going to bridge and build the continent. We are talking about our people, not only the continent, but across, the Atlantic, African diaspora, people of African descent, or whatever you may call the so-called African Americans, who we know as Africans. So these are the important things we are talking about on this channel, Connect Africa. So we are not simply looking for likes. So if you do share what we are presenting on this channel, and share it with others to listen to it, you are building Africa. You are not only doing giving likes to people for them to feel good that they have produced something, but rather you are building with us together the new Africa that we want, and our forefathers envisioned. So I want to thank you all. Subscribe to the channel and invite others. Invite two people, and let them also invite other two people. Encourage them to do the same, and share and like whatever is on the channel. There's many videos we have watched. There's many topics we have spoken about in the past. They are
Yeah.
on this channel. Go out there and then watch them, go through them, there's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of knowledge that we have been
Exactly.
dropping for a long time. And we have been speaking about events which have even happened today. We have spoken about some of these events in 2020, 2021, and some of the things have come to pass. So you need to go out there and revise those things which we have been speaking about, so that you can be ready for the next, events that are coming through, or you can be ready for for the future, or for the Africa that we are building. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame, for your time. Yeah. So until next time, we in our discussion here. So bye bye. Yeah.